In the year 2154, humanity had long since reached the stars. Colonies on Mars, the Moon and beyond had sprouted like seeds in the fertile soil of exploration. Yet, despite all the technological marvels, the greatest discovery came not from the known corners of the universe, but from a forgotten corner of the Earth. Dr. Emily Hayes, an astrophysicist and a leading researcher at the Institute for Interstellar Exploration, had spent years combing through the relics of humanity's past. She wasn't one of those who focused on the most advanced technologies of the day. Instead, she studied the remnants of the lost world from centuries ago. Among her many finds, one object stood out, a seemingly unremarkable, weathered journal found in a buried vault beneath the ruins of old New York City. The journal, written in a strange language, had baffled linguists and cryptographers for years. But Emily, with her deep knowledge of historical codes and forgotten dialects, believed she could crack it. She had already made substantial progress in decoding it. The journal described strange phenomena, interdimensional travel, and a secret society of scientists who had discovered the existence of parallel universes long before humanity had ever stepped foot on Mars.
One evening, as the sunset behind the towering spires of the Institute, Emily made a breakthrough.
A passage in the journal referenced something known only as the key, an artifact that, according to the journal, held the power to unlock the boundaries of time and space. The words were vague, but Emily's intuition told her this was no ordinary relic. This was something that could change the very fabric of reality itself. Her mind raced. The possibilities were endless. If the key existed, it could revolutionize humanity's understanding of the cosmos. It could lead to discoveries that were once thought impossible. But it was also clear that this artifact was not something to be taken lightly. Whoever controlled the key would hold immense power. Emily knew she had to find it. But she was not the only one seeking it. There were whispers of a shadowy organization, one that had existed for centuries, who were also hunting for the key. The society had remained in the shadows, manipulating world events from behind the scenes, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true purpose. And so, Emily found herself at a crossroads. She could continue her research in relative safety, keeping the discovery of the key to herself, or she could risk everything and embark on a quest that could change the course of history. As she pondered her next move, her communications device buzzed. It was a message from her colleague, Dr. Samuel Briggs, a brilliant engineer who had helped her analyze some of the journal's more technical passages. The message was simple but urgent. "You need to see this, Emily. It's about the key." Emily arrived at Dr. Briggs' lab just before dawn, the skyline of the city still cloaked in the early morning fog. The lab was located in a high-rise building that overlooked the vast expanse of the city, a city that had long been both a symbol of humanity's achievements and a reminder of the mistakes made along the way. The light from the setting sun cast long shadows across the sleek metallic surfaces of the lab's walls, and Emily could feel the tension in the air as she entered. Briggs was already there, hunched over a set of holographic displays, his face illuminated by the ghostly glow of the data projections. He looked up as Emily approached, his eyes wide with a mix of excitement and concern. "Emily, you need to see this," he said, his voice laced with urgency. He tapped a few commands into the air, and a three-dimensional map of Earth appeared in front of them. The map was centered on a remote location in the Arctic Circle, a place that had been largely ignored by the rest of the world. But according to the data, there was something there.
Something important.
"I've been running simulations based on the cryptic references in the journal," Briggs explained. "This location, it matches up with an anomaly in the electromagnetic fields of the region. But the most interesting part is this." He zoomed in on a specific area, an island that had not appeared on any known maps for centuries. Emily's heart skipped a beat. "The key." "Exactly," Briggs said. "The journal mentioned a hidden temple located on this island. It could be where the key is hidden, or at least where the path to it begins." Emily took a deep breath. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for. But there were many unanswered questions. Why had the location been hidden? Why had no one else discovered it in all these years? And most importantly, who else knew about it? Briggs turned to her. "Emily, I'm not the only one who's been looking into this. The organization. They've been trying to track down the key for decades. And they're getting closer. We don't have much time."
Emilys mind raced.
She had always known that she wasn't the only one searching for the key, but she hadn't realized how close the others were. The organization had resources, unlimited resources. They could reach places Emily couldn't. They had the power to influence governments, control the media, and manipulate entire industries. But Emily wasn't just going to give up. Not now. Not when the key was so close. "We'll need a team," she said, her voice firm.
I kent du sis alone.
"We'll need experts in archaeology, cryptography, and combat. We'll need to be ready for anything." Briggs nodded. "I'll start reaching out to the people we can trust. But we need to be careful. If we're not careful, the organization will find us before we even get close." Emily looked at the map one more time. The island was isolated, hidden in the frigid expanse of the Arctic. It would be a dangerous journey, but she had no choice. She had to find the key before the organization did. The fate of humanity might depend on it. The expedition to the Arctic was a carefully planned operation. Emily, Briggs, and their small team had gathered in a secure facility outside of the city, preparing for what was to come. The team was composed of a diverse group of specialists: Dr. Lydia Zhang, an archaeologist with expertise in ancient civilizations; Jonathan Jacques Reyes, a former military operative with a background in survival and tactical combat; and Ana Martinez, a cryptographer who had cracked some of the most difficult codes in history. They had all come together with a single purpose: to find the key and ensure that it did not fall into the wrong hands. The journey to the Arctic island would take them through a maze of frozen waters, treacherous icebergs, and unpredictable weather. The Institute's resources had allowed them to secure a state-of-the-art research vessel, capable of navigating the harsh conditions of the polar regions. But even with the best technology, there was no guarantee of success. As they set sail from the northern coast of Canada, the landscape around them began to change. The familiar green of the continent's forests gave way to vast, barren stretches of snow and ice. The ship cut through the icy waters with precision, its hull groaning under the pressure of the freezing temperatures. Emily stood at the bow, her breath misting in the cold air as she gazed out at the endless white expanse. "We're getting close," Jax said from behind her, his voice muffled by the wind. He had taken up the role of the team's scout, always alert and on guard.
The readings from the satellite confirm it.
The island should be just beyond this next ridge. Emily nodded, her thoughts occupied with the task ahead. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. They were venturing into the unknown, and she knew that whatever lay ahead could change everything. But she also knew that if they didn't act, the organization would find the key first. And no one, not even her, could predict the consequences of such power in the wrong hands. As the days passed, the conditions grew harsher. The wind howled relentlessly, and the temperature plummeted to dangerous levels. They took turns keeping watch, maintaining their course, and studying the data from their sensors. The isolation of the Arctic was palpable, a vast wilderness that felt untouched by time. Yet, as Emily reflected on it, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone else had been here long before them. Late one night, as the moon hung low in the sky, the ship's alarms suddenly blared, piercing the silence of the frozen landscape. Emily rushed to the control room, her heart pounding in her chest. Briggs was already there, his hands flying over the controls as he tried to make sense of the situation.
"What's happening?" Emily demanded.
"Radar's picking up something." "A ship, but it's not one of ours," Briggs said, his voice tight with concern. "It's moving fast, and it's coming straight for us." Anna, standing nearby, began typing furiously on her console. "I've got an ID on the vessel. It's registered to the organization." Emily's stomach twisted. They had been found. They had been careful, using encrypted channels and obscure paths, but it seemed the organization had anticipated their every move. "We need to move now," Jax said, his eyes sharp with determination. The team quickly sprang into action, grabbing their gear and rushing to the escape pods. The ship was no longer a safe place, not with the organization's forces closing in. Emily could only hope that they would be able to reach the island before the organization did. As they descended into the escape pods, Emily's mind raced. She had prepared for many contingencies, but nothing had truly prepared her for this moment. The reality was settling in. There was no turning back now. The escape pods shot out from the main vessel, cutting through the cold night air. The landscape below was a blur of white and gray, the island still hidden beneath the ice. But Emily could feel the weight of the pursuit, the ticking clock that was pushing them toward an uncertain fate. The escape pods landed on the icy surface of the island with a jarring thud, the impact sending a shockwave through the team's bodies. Despite the rough landing, they were alive, and that was all that mattered. The wind howled around them, biting at their exposed skin, but Emily quickly scanned their surroundings. They had arrived. Jax was the first to step out of the pod, his breath forming a cloud in the cold air. He surveyed the barren landscape, his sharp eyes scanning for any signs of danger. "We're here," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Now we need to find the temple." Emily stepped out next, pulling the hood of her insulated jacket tight around her face. The island was desolate, a frozen wasteland that stretched out in all directions. The wind carried the faint scent of saltwater, and the landscape was dotted with jagged cliffs and snow-covered hills. But there, barely visible in the distance, was a structure. Something that didn't belong in this place. A massive, ancient building, half buried in snow and ice, its architecture unlike anything Emily had ever seen. "There it is," she whispered, her voice tinged with awe. "The temple." The team gathered their gear and began their trek across the island, moving cautiously toward the mysterious structure. The journey was slow, as the ice and snow made every step a struggle, but the sense of urgency drove them forward. They couldn't afford to waste time. The organization was likely not far behind, and Emily had no intention of letting them get to the key before they did. The closer they got to the temple, the more Emily felt an unsettling sense of anticipation. There was something about the place that felt ancient, as though it had been waiting for them. The architecture, though partially hidden by the ice, appeared to be built with a level of precision that was far beyond what any civilization had been capable of thousands of years ago. As they approached the entrance, Emily noticed strange markings on the stone, symbols that matched some of the symbols she had seen in the journal. "These must be the key," she said, pointing to the carvings. "The journal mentioned that the symbols would guide us. We need to decipher them." Anna, the cryptographer, immediately stepped forward, her eyes scanning the symbols with intense focus. "These are old. Older than anything I've seen. But they're not entirely unfamiliar." "What do they mean?" Emily asked, her voice tight with tension. Anna took a deep breath, her fingers brushing lightly over the stone. "I think they represent a sequence. A code that unlocks the entrance. It's not just a translation, it's a pattern. Something that requires us to understand not just the language, but the way it's meant to be interpreted." As Anna began working, Emily's gaze shifted toward the entrance of the temple. The massive stone doors loomed ahead, their edges worn by time and weather. There was no visible lock, no mechanism that could be seen. It was as if the temple had been designed to remain sealed until the right people arrived. And now, they were here. "We need to hurry," Jax said, his voice low and serious. "The organization will be here soon. I can already see the heat signatures of their ships on my tracker." Emily felt a surge of urgency. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. "Anna, we need to move. Whatever the code is, we need to open the doors now." Anna nodded, her fingers flying over the markings. After what felt like an eternity, she stopped. "Got it. It's a sequence of pressure points. We need to activate them in the right order." Without hesitation, Emily pressed the first stone as indicated by Anna. The moment her hand made contact, a low rumble echoed through the island. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the massive doors slowly began to open. Ice and snow shifted, revealing a dark passageway leading into the depths of the temple. "Let's go," Emily said, her voice firm as she motioned for the team to follow her inside. The passage was narrow, and the walls were covered in more of the same symbols that Anna had deciphered. The air inside was thick with the scent of ancient stone and the faintest hint of something metallic. It felt as though the walls themselves were alive, as if the temple was aware of their presence. The deeper they went, the more Emily felt that sense of foreboding. It was as though the temple was watching them, waiting for them to reach its heart. And then, as they rounded a corner, they found it, the chamber at the center of the temple. It was vast, its ceiling stretching up into darkness, the walls adorned with murals that depicted scenes of strange, otherworldly beings and far-off galaxies. In the center of the room, on a pedestal of stone, was the key. It was unlike anything Emily had imagined. A sphere of swirling energy, glowing with an otherworldly light. It pulsed with power, and as Emily stepped closer, she felt a strange pull, as though the key was calling to her. Before she could reach it, a voice echoed from the shadows. "Too late." The voice, low and cold, echoed through the chamber, sending a chill down Emily's spine. She turned toward the sound, her heart racing. There, standing in the shadows, were figures she had feared but never expected to face so soon. Members of the organization. Their presence was almost a physical weight in the room. The leader of the group stepped forward, a tall figure cloaked in a black high-tech suit that shimmered with a faint metallic sheen. His face was obscured by a helmet, but his voice was unmistakable. "Dr. Hayes," he said, his tone filled with disdain, "we've been following your every move. You really thought you could find the key before us?" Emily's hand instinctively went to the blaster at her side, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. There were too many of them, and their technology was far superior to anything she had. The man in front of her was no ordinary adversary. His helmet shifted, revealing a sharp, calculating face. The insignia on his chest was familiar. She had seen it in old records. It was the mark of the Silent Order, a clandestine group of scientists, mercenaries, and politicians who had been manipulating world events for centuries. "You'll find that your efforts have been in vain," the leader continued. "We've anticipated your every move. The key was always meant to be ours." Jax immediately moved to stand beside Emily, his stance defensive. "We're not giving it to you," he said, his voice steady. The leader chuckled darkly. "You think you have a choice in the matter? You're already too deep in this to turn back. We control the flow of history. We control the future." "Not anymore," Emily retorted, her voice filled with resolve. "You might have had control before, but we're taking it back. The key belongs to humanity, not to a shadow organization." The leader's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. The key is more than just a device. It's the key to rewriting reality itself, time, space, consciousness. We've spent decades perfecting the technology to harness its power. You, Dr. Hayes, are standing in the way of progress." A flash of movement caught Emily's eye. She turned just in time to see one of the operatives reaching for a control panel embedded in the wall. "They're trying to activate the key," she said, her voice rising. "Stop them." Jax was already moving. He sprinted toward the panel, but the leader gestured sharply, and two of his operatives advanced, blocking Jax's path. A fierce firefight broke out, the sound of blaster shots echoing through the chamber. Emily ducked behind a pillar, pulling her own weapon from its holster and taking aim. The leader, however, was unfazed, his eyes focused on the glowing sphere at the center of the room. "Stay back," Emily shouted. "We won't let you have it." The leader's expression shifted, a strange mix of amusement and frustration crossing his face. "You don't understand, do you? The key is already reacting to us. The more you resist, the more it will change. Time is already shifting." Emily felt a strange pressure in the air, like the very fabric of reality was bending around them. The key, which had once been a still, pulsing sphere, now emitted a harsh, crackling light. Its surface seemed to shimmer, distorting the space around it. For a moment, everything went silent. The room, the battle, even the wind outside, all of it felt suspended. The leader took a step closer, his voice now low and commanding. "You can feel it, can't you? The key is alive. It's opening the doorway." Suddenly, the walls of the chamber began to ripple like the surface of a pond disturbed by a stone. The murals that had once depicted distant galaxies now seemed to move, the figures shifting as if they were alive. The floor beneath their feet trembled, and the air around them grew thick with energy. "Get back!" Emily shouted, realizing that the key was reacting to their presence in ways that couldn't be anticipated. It wasn't just unlocking something, it was changing the very structure of the temple, possibly the fabric of space itself. But the leader was too close now. He reached out, his hand grazing the key. In that moment, everything in the room seemed to warp. The key flared with brilliant, otherworldly light, and then, without warning, the floor beneath their feet cracked open. Emily felt herself falling. The fall was dizzying. One moment, Emily was standing in the temple, facing the leader of the Silent Order, and the next, the world around her twisted into a blur of light and shadow. Time and space seemed to lose all meaning. She felt herself plummeting through an endless abyss, but there was no sensation of gravity, no weight to the fall. Everything was fluid, as though the very laws of physics had been rewritten. Then, with a sudden jolt, Emily landed hard on a cold metallic surface. The impact knocked the breath out of her, but she quickly scrambled to her feet, disoriented and shaken. Her surroundings were completely unfamiliar. The air was thin, and the walls around her appeared to be made of smooth, reflective material, casting strange distortions of light. "Where are we?" she muttered to herself, her voice echoing in the empty space. She stood in what appeared to be a vast, circular chamber. The walls were lined with strange symbols, similar to the ones she had seen in the temple, but these were more complex. Interwoven patterns that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. The ceiling was impossibly high, vanishing into darkness, while the floor was covered with glowing lines that formed an intricate web. Emily took a cautious step forward, her mind racing. What had just happened? The key, when the leader touched it, everything had shifted. She couldn't make sense of it. It was as if they had been ripped out of one reality and dropped into another. But how? And why? She reached for her communicator, only to find it dead. There was no signal, no way to contact the others. Panic began to rise in her chest, but she quickly forced it down. She had to stay focused. The key, the Silent Order and the leader, they were all still out there somewhere. As she began to explore the chamber, she noticed something strange. There were no doors. No exits. The walls were smooth and unbroken, as though the room itself had no beginning or end. It felt wrong, as if it was neither part of this world nor any other. "Emily." The voice came from behind her, a whisper that sent a jolt of recognition through her. She spun around, heart pounding, but saw no one. The room was still empty. "Emily." The voice repeated, clearer this time, but it wasn't just a voice, it was a presence, a strange energy that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves.
Wo's Tere?
Emily called, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest.
Show yourself.
A shadow flickered across the room, a form that appeared for an instant and then vanished, as if it was never there to begin with. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The figure had been human. No, not quite. There was something off about it, as if the form was shifting between realities, existing in one place but not quite fully occupying it. "Help me," the figure whispered, its voice ragged and distorted, as though it was caught between dimensions. Emily took a hesitant step forward, drawn to the mysterious figure.
Who are you?
What is this place? The figure seemed to flicker again, its shape becoming more defined. This time, it was a woman, dressed in the same high-tech uniform as the members of the Silent Order, her face obscured by a visor. She was reaching out, her hand trembling as though struggling to maintain solid form. I was one of them," the woman whispered, her voice barely audible.
The key. It trapped Emil here. It tore Emil from my reality, from everything ikne.
You have to stop them. You have to destroy the key. Emily took another step closer, her heart racing. The woman's face seemed to blur, flickering like a broken hologram. What do you mean?
What's happening?
The woman's hand extended further, her expression desperate. The key isn't just a device, it's a doorway.
A rift in space and time.
It allows its wielder to bend reality to their will, to rewrite history, to change the course of everything. But it's dangerous. It's unstable. It doesn't just alter the past or the future, it shatters everything in between. It pulls people from different timelines, different dimensions. You can't let them use it. Suddenly, the woman's form flickered violently, her body distorting into a blur of light and shadow. Her voice became a distorted scream.
Destroy it before it's too late.
Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the woman vanished, leaving Emily standing alone in the strange, silent chamber. She was shaken, But the urgency in the woman's words echoed in her mind. The key was more than just a weapon. It was a force, an uncontrollable power that could tear apart the very fabric of reality. And now, Emily understood the true extent of the danger they were facing. The Silent Order wasn't just after the key for its technological advantages. They were trying to control something far more powerful, something that could change everything. But Emily didn't have time to process it all. She had to find a way out. The others were out there, Jax, Briggs, Anna, and she needed to find them before the key did more damage. She couldn't let the Silent Order win. She couldn't let them unleash the full potential of the key. As she turned to leave the chamber, the walls seemed to pulse with a strange energy. The symbols on the walls began to glow, and the web of lines on the floor shifted, as though the room itself was alive. Emily didn't know where she was, but she knew one thing: if she didn't find a way to stop the key, there would be no reality left to return to. Emily's steps were swift but cautious as she moved through the strange chamber. The walls were no longer static. They seemed to pulse with an energy of their own, rippling as if the very fabric of time and space was stretching around her. The glowing symbols on the walls shifted with every blink, rearranging themselves into new patterns. It was as though the room was testing her, challenging her to decipher the riddle of its existence. With no clear direction, she felt a growing unease. The woman's words echoed in her mind: destroy it before it's too late. The key was not just a weapon. It was something far worse. A doorway to a fractured reality. And if the Silent Order gained control of it, they would rewrite history itself. She had to stop them. But where were the others? And how could she escape this place? As she continued forward, a low hum filled the air, vibrating through the floor and walls. It seemed to originate from the very center of the room, a deep resonance that made her feel as if she was caught between moments in time. The humming grew louder, more insistent, until Emily could no longer ignore it. Turning her attention to the center of the chamber, she saw a strange device resting on a pedestal, almost like an altar, but one designed to hold something more than just an object. It was a circular platform with intricate lines running through it, leading to a central core. The glow from the lines seemed to pulse in rhythm with the humming, almost as if they were calling her. She approached it cautiously, studying the structure before her. The key must be somewhere near. She was certain of it. The temple had been built with purpose, designed to keep the powerful object safe. But now, with the fabric of reality itself in turmoil, the key could be anywhere. As her hand hovered above the central core of the platform, the room seemed to shift once more, its walls blurring and warping in a wave of disorienting motion. Emily staggered backward, gripping the edge of the pedestal for support. This wasn't just a place of technology, it was a place where time itself bent and cracked. The key wasn't just a device. It was a link, a tether, to something far more dangerous. Suddenly, the walls seemed to ripple, and in the distance, she saw a faint outline of figures, people she recognized. They appeared and vanished, fading in and out like ghosts trapped in an endless loop. She squinted, trying to focus on their shapes. It was Jax, Anna, and Briggs. But something was wrong. Their faces were distorted, as if they were shifting between moments in time. Jax. Emily called, her voice barely above a whisper, as though she feared disturbing the delicate balance of the strange space.
The figures flickered again.
This time, their movements were more deliberate, as if they were reaching for something, trying to communicate with her. But the distortion was too strong. She couldn't make out their faces, and the closer she got, the farther they seemed to drift. The humming intensified, and Emily's thoughts raced. The key wasn't just a tool to manipulate time, it was the very catalyst that was causing the disintegration of reality. The Silent Order had known this. They had sought to control the key for centuries, but they hadn't fully understood its potential. No one had. A low growl of frustration escaped her throat. She couldn't stand here and wait. The only way to save her team, to save the world, was to find the key. But where was it? The center of the room, the pedestal, seemed to pulse with an ethereal energy, drawing her closer. Taking a deep breath, Emily placed her hand on the surface of the pedestal. The moment she did, the chamber seemed to collapse inward. The walls twisted around her, and she felt herself falling again, falling through layers of space and time. This wasn't just a physical fall. It was a dive into the unknown, a journey through the very essence of existence. As she fell, her mind scrambled to make sense of the images flashing around her.
Flickers of the past.
Snippets of conversations with her team. Glimpses of the leader of the Silent Order, his face twisted in anger and triumph. And then, an image of the key itself, glowing brighter than ever before, its energy pulsing like a heartbeat. Her thoughts became fragmented as time bled into itself. She saw moments from her childhood, memories long forgotten, flash before her eyes. She saw Jax, his hand reaching out to her as if trying to pull her back from the precipice. She saw Anna, her face full of determination, and Briggs, ever the cynic, cracking a joke even in the face of danger. It was as if the room, the key, was revealing everything all at once. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the disorienting fall stopped.
Emily landet hart on the ground, her knees buckling beneath her.
She gasped for air, her heart pounding in her chest. She was no longer in the strange chamber. She was outside, in the cold, in the snow.
The Island.
The temple. She looked around dazed and saw her team, Jax, Anna, and Briggs, standing just a few feet away. They, too, seemed disoriented, as though they had been through the same experience. They were looking at her with wide eyes, as if unsure of how to proceed.
Emily. Jack's voice broke through the hatze. Are you okay?
She nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. I think I found it. The key. But it's more than just a device.
It's warping reality.
We need to stop it before it tears everything apart. Anna stepped forward, her face filled with concern. Then we need to act fast. Before the Silent Order finds it first. Emily nodded. Let's go. We don't have much time. The snowstorm outside the temple had intensified. The wind howled through the frozen landscape, carrying with it the scent of something ancient, something wrong. Emily led her team through the storm, each step hard-won against the biting cold. The island felt alive with tension, as though it, too, was aware of the threat that loomed in the distance. The Silent Order was on their heels, and the key was slipping further out of their grasp by the minute. We need to get to the extraction point, Jack said, his voice muffled by the snow swirling around them.
The helicopter can't wait forever.
Emily nodded, her mind racing. The key had already begun to unravel time and space. It wasn't just some artifact to be collected, it was the catalyst for something far more catastrophic. If the Silent Order reached it, there would be no stopping them. They could rewrite the past, manipulate the future, and worst of all, erase any trace of the world they knew. But getting to the extraction point wasn't going to be easy. The island was treacherous, a maze of cliffs, hidden ravines, and long-abandoned ruins. The path to the chopper was long, but the real danger lay in what was hunting them. Stay alert, Emily said, scanning the horizon. The wind had died down, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. We don't know where they are.
Anna pulled her collar tighter against the wind, her eyes scanning the darkened seas. We can't keep running forever.
We need to find the key and destroy it. I'm with you, Briggs added, his voice laced with determination.
We come this far.
We're not turning back now. Emily appreciated their resolve, but the weight of the situation pressed down on her. The Silent Order would stop at nothing to get the key, and they knew the island better than she ever could. She had no doubt that they were already hunting her team, waiting for the moment they would slip up. They trekked through the snow for what felt like hours, their surroundings becoming increasingly more desolate. The jagged cliffs loomed on all sides, and the ruins of an ancient structure began to emerge from the snow, its broken pillars and crumbled walls giving the impression that this place had once been a place of worship, or of power. There was something unsettling about it, as if the ruins themselves were tied to the key. Over there, Emily said, pointing to a large stone archway just ahead. The remnants of a grand temple loomed beyond it, and within its shadow, she could almost feel the weight of history pressing down on her. We're close, Jack said, his breath visible in the frigid air. The group made their way toward the archway, but as they drew closer, a low rumble began to shake the ground beneath them. Emily froze, her senses on high alert. Something wasn't right. A sudden deafening crack filled the air, followed by the sound of shuffling footsteps. Move. Emily shouted, instinctively pulling her team behind cover. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and through the swirling snow, figures began to materialize.
The silent order.
They had found them. The figures emerged from the storm, clad in their high-tech suits, their weapons drawn. The leader, the same man Emily had seen in the temple, was at the forefront, his eyes narrowed in determination. "I warned you," the leader said, his voice carrying over the wind. "You should have stayed out of this. Now, you'll regret it." "We're not backing down," Emily said, standing tall despite the overwhelming odds.
"You don't control the key.
It's not yours to wield." The leader's eyes flickered with annoyance, but then he smirked.
"You still don't understand, do you?
The key is far more than just a tool. It's the bridge between all realities.
You can't fight fate. This is bigger than you."
Emily's heart pounded as the silent order advanced, their weapons trained on her team. She glanced at Jax, Anna, and Briggs, all of them tense and ready to fight. There was no escape, no negotiating with these people. It was a standoff, and the fate of everything rested on what happened next. "Jax," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind.
"When I give the signal, take the shot."
He nodded, his hand twitching near the blaster holstered at his side. The leader stepped forward, his gaze locked on Emily. "You've underestimated us. You've been running, hiding, but we've been patient. And now, it's time for you to see just what the key can do." With a sharp motion, the leader raised his hand. Emily's stomach dropped as she saw the key, pulled from one of the operatives' packs, glow to life. Its light flickered, and with it, the world around them seemed to ripple, as though the very air was twisting and distorting. "Do you see now?" the leader asked, his voice soft but filled with a cold certainty.
"You can't escape.
The key is opening the door to the end of this world.
You're just standing in the way of what comes next." Emily's mind raced.
She could feel the change in the air. The fabric of reality was being stretched. She knew they had to act, and fast. "Now!" she shouted. Jax didn't hesitate. He drew his blaster and fired, the shot striking the operative closest to the leader. Chaos erupted. Blaster fire filled the air, the sound of weapons clashing with the howling wind.
Emily dove into action, running for cover behind the ruins.
Anna and Briggs were already in motion, providing cover fire as Emily sprinted toward the leader. The key was within reach, but she knew that even if she could destroy it, the battle wasn't over. The silent order would not give up without a fight. The chaos was overwhelming. Blaster fire echoed off the ruins, the staccato rhythm of gunshots punctuated by the growls of snow shifting beneath the combatants' feet. Emily's heart raced as she sprinted toward the leader, her eyes focused on the glowing key in his hands. The energy emanating from it seemed to distort the very air around her, bending reality as she moved closer. She could feel the weight of time itself pressing against her, every moment stretching out unnaturally. Jax's shots rang out behind her, and she could hear Anna and Briggs providing cover fire, their blasters crackling with energy. But Emily's attention was fixed solely on the leader, who had already begun to activate the key, the symbols on its surface glowing brighter with each passing second. It was pulsing, like a heartbeat, and with each pulse, she felt the world around her warp just a little more. "Stop!" Emily shouted, desperation in her voice.
"You don't know what you're doing."
The leader didn't flinch. He simply smiled, a cold, calculating grin that sent a chill down her spine.
"You still don't understand, do you?
The key isn't a weapon.
It's a doorway. A bridge to a very possible reality.
And once I've unlocked it fully, I will reshape this world as I see fit." As he spoke, the air around him seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from a desert. The key's light intensified, spreading outward in a spiral that distorted the environment. The ruins around them began to twist and bend, as if they were part of a surreal painting, unraveling at the edges. Emily gritted her teeth. She could feel the weight of the world shifting, the fabric of reality slipping through her fingers. If she didn't act fast, they would all be lost in whatever twisted version of existence the leader was trying to create. "Jax now!" she screamed, urging him to make his move. Jax didn't hesitate. From behind cover, he adjusted his aim and fired again, this time hitting the leader's arm. The leader staggered back, the key slipping from his grasp for a brief moment.
The light flickered.
But then the leader laughed, a dark guttural sound that seemed to resonate through the very air. You think this will stop me? You think you can just destroy what's already been set in motion? He held his hand out, palm facing the sky, and the key rose into the air, hovering between them like a twisted star. I am the key's master. And now, I will show you what it truly means to bend reality to your will. Emily's eyes widened in horror. The key was growing more powerful by the second, its energy spiraling out of control. The very space around them began to ripple, as if time itself was folding in on itself. Moments from the past and future collided in a cacophony of images. Memories she didn't recognize, faces she had never seen, and fragments of her own life flashing before her. She stumbled back, disoriented. This isn't you, she whispered. This isn't who you are. The leader's eyes locked onto hers, cold and emotionless. Who I am doesn't matter anymore. The key has given me the power to become something more.
I am beyond the limitations of time and space. I am the one who will reshape everything.
The ground beneath them trembled as the air warped around them. Emily felt a sharp pull in her chest, as if the very center of her being was being drawn into the key's gravitational field. She could hear Jax shouting something, but the words were muffled, drowned out by the chaos unfolding around them. The walls of reality were collapsing, the world around them warping in impossible ways.
Emily's mind raced.
She had to act. The key had to be destroyed, before it was too late. She drew her own blaster, aiming it at the hovering key. The energy radiating from it was unbearable, making it hard to focus. But Emily gritted her teeth and pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, a pulse of energy that connected with the key. For a brief moment, the world went still.
The distortions in the air froze, and the light from the key flickered.
Emily's heart skipped a beat. Had she done it? Had she destroyed it? But then, the key's light flared brighter, blinding her. She was thrown backward, her body slamming into the cold stone of the ruins. Her vision swam as the air around her vibrated with an otherworldly hum. The ground shook violently beneath her. In the distance, she saw Jax and Anna struggling to stay on their feet, the waves of energy emanating from the key throwing them off balance. Briggs was already moving toward her, his expression determined despite the chaos. Emily. Jax's voice reached her through the cacophony. Get up. We need to move. But as Emily pushed herself to her feet, she realized that the world around them was changing in ways she couldn't comprehend. The space was warping, folding in on itself like a twisted maze. One moment, they were standing in the ruins, and the next, they were in a different place entirely. The snowstorm had disappeared, replaced by a vast, barren desert. The wind howled, kicking up sand as the distant sun beat down relentlessly.
No. Emily breathed.
This isn't right. The leader, his body shuddering with the power of the key, turned to face them. His expression was no longer one of confidence. It was one of madness, a wild gleam in his eyes as he stood at the center of the new reality he had created. This is only the beginning, he said, his voice reverberating through the strange new world. There is no escape now.
Everything you know, everything you have fought for, it's all gone.
The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. There was no horizon, no sky, just an oppressive, barren world where the rules of reality had been shattered. And in the center of it all stood the leader, holding the key. Emily's breath caught in her throat. They had failed. They had destroyed the key, but in doing so, they had unleashed something far worse. They had unlocked the door to an endless, fractured reality. The desert stretched out in every direction, a vast emptiness that felt as though it could swallow them whole.
The sun beat down relentlessly, casting long shadows over the cracked earth.
Emily shielded her eyes, trying to make sense of the new world they had found themselves in. Nothing about this place made sense. The air felt wrong, too still, too heavy, as if the very atmosphere had been altered by the chaos the key had unleashed. The leader stood in the center of it all, his form bathed in the unnatural light of the key. The energy pulsed around him like a living thing, swirling in patterns that defied logic. It was as though the key was feeding on the world itself, bending it to his will. And in his eyes, Emily saw madness. He was no longer just a man. He was something else now, a conduit for the very forces of reality. "We're trapped," Anna said, her voice hoarse from the dust swirling around them. "This place, it's not real. None of it is real." "We're in the Key's domain," Emily said, her throat dry. She was struggling to keep her thoughts clear. The air itself felt heavy, as though it was pressing down on her chest.
It's vaping evating. Time, space, reality itself.
Briggs moved up beside her, his eyes scanning their surroundings.
So, wat do we do now?
How do we get out of here?
Emily's mind raced.
The Key had torn a hole in the fabric of reality, and now they were stuck in a fractured world, a place where nothing was fixed. Everything was in flux, shifting, warping, changing with each passing second. The leader had become the architect of this madness, and they were at his mercy. "We need to find a way to destroy the Key," Emily said. "It's the only way to stop this." But as she said the words, a part of her feared it was already too late. The Key was no longer just an object, it had become a force. And no matter how much they tried to fight it, they were powerless against its grip.
Don't you see?
The leader's voice carried across the desert, his words amplified by the Key's power. "You've already lost. There is no escaping this world. There is no going back.
This is the future, the new reality. You will never leave here. You will never return to your own time."
Emily clenched her fists, frustration boiling in her chest. "You're wrong," she shouted. "This isn't the future. You can't just create a new reality at will. There are consequences." The leader laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the barren landscape.
Consequences? You don't understand.
The Key has no consequences. It is freedom. It is power. And I am its master. You cannot comprehend what I've unlocked.
This world is just the beginning.
With the Key, I will rewrite history.
I will shape the universe as I see fit.
As he spoke, the world around them seemed to shift again. The barren desert melted away, replaced by a city, an ancient city, its towering spires and domed structures unlike anything Emily had ever seen. The streets were bustling with people, but something was wrong. Their faces were blank, their eyes vacant as if they were mere shadows of real people. Emily's breath caught in her throat.
What is this?
"A glimpse of what's to come," the leader said, his voice filled with exultation.
This is my vision of the future. A world of my design. Every place, every time, is now under my control.
I can create anything, erase anything. This city, this reality, is one of many.
A perfect world. A perfect order.
The city flickered, its skyline warping and twisting before Emily's eyes. She blinked, and suddenly they were somewhere else. A lush, verdant forest, teeming with strange creatures that didn't belong. She blinked again, and they were back in the desert. The world was shifting with every passing moment, every breath. Reality had become a fleeting illusion. "You can't control everything," Emily said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her chest.
You can't control time, space, and all the lives in it. The leader's smile twisted.
"I already have."
Time is irrelevant. The future, the past, it's all the same.
You're just seeing the consequences of your failure to understand the Key's power.
This is the world now. This is the new order.
And there's nothing you can do to stop it. Emily could feel the weight of his words bearing down on her. He believed it. He truly thought he had become a god, able to shape and destroy worlds at will. But she knew better. This wasn't power, it was madness. And it was up to her to stop it. "Briggs," she said, her voice low. "Do you have the EMP device?" Briggs nodded, pulling a small metallic object from his pack. "I've got it. But if we use it, it could destroy everything around us."
We might not make it out.
"It's the only way," Emily said. "We have to take out the Key's power source. If we don't, this world will be all that's left."
We'll be trapped in this fractured reality forever.
Jax stepped forward, his expression determined.
I'm with you. We come this far.
We're not going to let him win. Emily looked at her team, her family. They had faced impossible odds together, and now, They were about to face their greatest challenge yet. The future of everything depended on what happened next. With a deep breath, Emily nodded.
Lädst du this?
The EMP device in Briggs' hands was their last hope. It was a crude but powerful piece of technology, designed to disrupt electronics on a massive scale. The plan was simple: disable the key's power, stop its connection to this fractured reality, and hopefully restore the world to what it was before. The problem was, they had no idea what would happen when the EMP was triggered. Reality itself was unstable, and the key's influence over it was growing stronger by the second. Emily turned to Jax, Anna, and Briggs, her eyes filled with resolve. "We can do this. No matter what happens, we have to stick together. The EMP has to be activated right near the key, or it won't work." "Right," Jax said, his voice steady. "Let's take him down." The leader stood in the center of the distorted city, his arms raised to the sky as if drawing energy from the key itself. His eyes were closed, his expression one of blissful delirium. He was lost in his power, convinced that he had won. Emily's team moved forward, taking cover behind the warped buildings, silently making their way toward the center of the city. The atmosphere was thick with tension. With every step, Emily could feel the weight of reality shifting, the world bending around them like a fragile mirror, threatening to crack at any moment. "This place is falling apart," Anna whispered, her voice tense. "We need to hurry." "Stay focused," Emily replied.
Wie Realmostere.
They moved quickly, navigating the strange landscape of shifting structures and surreal visions. As they approached the leader, the air seemed to shimmer, and Emily felt the temperature drop. A chill ran down her spine. The leader was still oblivious to their presence. His back was turned, and the key hovered above him, glowing with an eerie light that distorted the world around it.
The city flickered in and out of existence, caught in the throes of the key's power.
"Now," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper.
Briggs, activate the EMP.
Briggs nodded and moved forward, his hand trembling slightly as he approached the device. The moment he pressed the button, a surge of energy rippled outward, a pulse that seemed to tear through the very fabric of reality. The ground shook, the air crackled with static, and the light from the key flared brighter than ever before. For a moment, everything stopped. Time seemed to freeze. Then, the world exploded. The EMP's blast hit the key with a force that sent shockwaves through the distorted city, and for an instant, Emily thought they had succeeded. But as the energy from the EMP spread, the key's light flared even brighter, and the world around them began to warp violently. The buildings twisted, the ground cracked open, and reality itself seemed to crumble. The leader's eyes shot open, his expression wild with panic. He raised his hands in desperation, but it was too late. The key was no longer under his control. The energy it released was too powerful, too unpredictable.
"No," the leader screamed. "You can't do this. I am the master of this reality."
The ground beneath them cracked open, sending Emily and her team tumbling into the abyss. The sky above shattered into 1,000 pieces, each fragment reflecting a different version of the world, 1,000 possibilities, all of them fractured and incomplete. Emily tried to reach out, but the world around her was collapsing. Everything she knew was falling apart, breaking into infinite pieces. She could hear Jax's voice calling her name, but it was distant, distorted. Time itself seemed to bend, twisting in impossible ways. And then, everything stopped.
Silence.
Emily blinked, and when her eyes opened, she found herself standing in a familiar place, the ruins of the ancient temple on the island, just as they had been when they first arrived.
The storm was gone.
The snow was gone. It was as though nothing had changed. The key, however, was no longer there.
"Emily."
Jax's voice broke through the silence, and she turned to find him standing beside her, his expression confused but relieved. Anna and Briggs were with him, equally disoriented. "I don't understand," Emily said, her voice trembling. "What happened? Where's the key?" Anna looked around, her brow furrowed. "We're back.
"We're in the temple again."
"It doesn't make sense," Briggs said, shaking his head.
"The world was falling apart."
"The key was supposed to."
"Destroy it," Emily whispered, her mind racing.
"We did destroy it, didn't we?" They stood in the ruins, staring at the place where the key had once been, now eerily empty. But something felt wrong. The air was too still, too silent. It wasn't just that they had returned, it was the feeling that everything they had known had been altered. Like they had just woken up from a nightmare, unsure if it had been real.
Suddenly, a voice broke through the stillness.
It was soft at first, almost a whisper, but growing louder with each passing second. You didn't destroy anything. The leader. He appeared before them, his form flickering like a shadow, not fully real, not fully there. His eyes burned with an otherworldly intensity, and his voice echoed through the temple, reverberating in their minds. You can't stop it, he continued, his tone filled with dark amusement.
You will only delete the inevitable.
The key cannot be destroyed. It is the center of all things, time, space, and everything in between.
You will never escape it.
Emily's heart raced. We're not done. We can still stop you. The leader's form flickered again, his face twisting in an expression of contempt.
You think you will won?
This is just one of many possibilities. You cannot destroy what is eternal. As his voice echoed through the temple, the walls began to tremble once more.
The ground shook, and the temple's ruins cracked.
The air distorted, and reality itself began to bend again.
The war for the future wasn't over.
It had only just begun. The ground trembled beneath Emily's feet as the temple's ruins began to fracture. The air around them crackled with energy, and Emily could feel the weight of the leader's words pressing down on her. She had thought they were done, that they had escaped the key's grasp, but now she realized the true depth of their struggle. The key was not just a device, it was an anchor, a force that held the very fabric of reality together. And the leader was its master. You can't hide from me, the leader's voice echoed, his form shifting like a mirage.
You think you will won? You haven't even begun to understand what I control.
Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what she had to do. They had no choice but to finish this once and for all. Jax, she said, turning to him. We have to destroy the leader's connection to the key. If we can sever that, it'll break his hold over everything. Jax nodded, his face grim.
I'm with you.
Let's finish this. Briggs stepped forward, his eyes locked onto the leader's flickering form. I'll help. We've come this far, and I'm not backing down now. Anna, her face set in determination, was already moving into position. We can't let him win. We'll end this together. The leader laughed, his voice hollow and mocking. You think you can defeat me? You think you can stop what's already been set in motion? You're nothing but ants, scurrying in the dust. The world around them was shifting again, the temple dissolving into chaos as reality warped and cracked. The air was thick with energy, and Emily could feel the power of the key surging through the ground beneath her. It was all connected, all feeding into the leader's will. If they didn't act now, it would be too late. We don't need to understand everything, Emily said, her voice steady despite the turmoil around her. We just need to stop you. With a deep breath, she drew her blaster, the weapon's hum filling the air. The leader's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, time seemed to stretch. She could feel the weight of his power, the pressure of his presence, but she refused to be intimidated. The leader's form shimmered again, his figure flickering in and out of focus as if he were fading, blurring in and out of existence. You're too late, he sneered. This world is already mine. Emily didn't wait. She fired. The shot rang out, a pulse of energy that tore through the shifting air, and the world seemed to hold its breath. For a split second, everything stopped. And then, the key's energy erupted in a burst of light. The ground cracked open beneath them, and a shock wave of energy radiated outward, shaking the ruins to their core. The temple began to crumble, its ancient stones collapsing into dust as the fabric of reality tore apart. Emily felt herself being thrown backward by the force of the explosion, her body slamming into the ground. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, she was lost in the chaos. The world spun around her, and she could hear the cries of her team, distorted and distant. But then, everything went still. The light from the key faded, and the oppressive weight of the leader's power lifted from the air. Emily pushed herself to her feet, her body aching from the impact, but her mind sharp with focus. The leader's form was gone, dissipating into nothingness, as if he had never existed. The world around them was quiet, too quiet. The ruins of the temple lay in ruins, but there was no longer the sense of distortion. The air was still, and the fractured pieces of reality that had been warping and shifting were finally settling. The key had been destroyed. They had done it. Jax, Anna, and Briggs were standing nearby, their faces bruised but relieved. They exchanged looks, their eyes filled with the unspoken realization that the battle was over. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The world around them was too still. The silence was deafening, as if the very air had been drained of all life.
Is it over?
Jax asked, his voice low. I think so, Emily said, her heart heavy with uncertainty. But I'm not sure. It feels like there's something missing. The ground beneath them shifted, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. The world was starting to tremble again, but this time, it wasn't the leader's power. It was something else. They looked around, their eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance, a figure appeared, a silhouette against the fading light. It was tall, humanoid, but its features were obscured by the distance and the shifting air. What is that? Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure grew closer, its form becoming clearer with each passing second. It was the leader. No, it was something else. His figure was there, but it was fractured, fragmented. He was not whole. It was as if he had been pulled apart, his very essence splintered and scattered across the world. The ground shook harder, and the air filled with the sound of grinding metal, of shifting stone, of an overwhelming force being unleashed. The figure before them raised its hand, and the world trembled. This is not the end, the voice echoed, distorted and hollow. You have only delayed the inevitable. The key was never just an object. It was the key to everything.
And I will rise again.
Emily's heart sank as she realized the truth. The battle was far from over.